We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast, the podcast designed for all you die-hard Georgia fans out there. If you're a die-hard Georgia fan, what are you waiting on? Go ahead, subscribe to the channel right now for a lot more in-depth Georgia football coverage designed for all you diehards out there. So subscribe, like, comment. I love to hear what you guys think about today's show and all of our episodes out there. While you're at it, for full episodes of our show, check out the Glory UGA podcast. Wherever you get your pod, you can find a ton of content out there for you guys, so I think you will enjoy that. But all right. With that, let's get into today's episode. With spring practice now a couple weeks in the review, and now we have the spring transfer portal window officially closed. You can still add some players, yes, but nobody else can enter the portal right now until we get to next December. But now after spring practice, after this spring transfer portal window is closed, we have a much clearer picture of what this 2025 Georgia football team is going to look like. At least a much clearer picture than we did back in early January in the immediate aftermath of the 2024 season, which is when I did my official depth chart preview, way too early, Georgia football 2025 depth chart preview. So today, armed with all that information that we talked about really over the past couple of months on this show. If you missed any of that, you can go back and check out all those videos. Got a ton of content from spring practice for you guys. But now that we have all of that information coming out of the spring, it's time to go back and update those way too early 2025 Georgia football depth chart projections. Is it still a little too early? Yeah, it's still a little too early. We're still 4 or 5 months away from the season. I don't like to say that out loud because it makes it seem like it's that far away. But it's not as early, right? And so today, we're going to start with what I believe. And if you followed this show throughout the totality of spring practice, you've heard me say this before. It's one of my big takeaways from the spring in general. We're going to start with what I believe is a Georgia offense that is absolutely loaded in 2025, especially at the skill positions. Is the offensive line still a question mark of sorts? Yeah, I think that's fair to say. But at the skill positions, I think we are straight up loaded. In fact, I would argue we're more loaded than ever in the Kirby Smart era. And if we're more loaded than ever in the Kirby Smart era at the skill positions, that might mean we're more loaded than ever in Georgia football history offensively. Now, it's early. We'll have to see him do it on the field, but I think you can look at what we have on hand this year, the playmakers that we have, and you're like, hey man, we got a ton of options out there. Is there one player the caliber of a Brock Bowers or a Ladd McConkey or a Nick Chubb back in the day? Probably not. We probably don't have a guy like that. Those are like unicorns, alphas, the likes of like you rarely see in college football, certainly at the University of Georgia. But it's not that we have one guy that's going to dominate like that. It's the sheer quantity of legit playmakers on this offense that I think separates it from some of the other offenses that we've seen in the Kirby Smart era, now approaching a decade of Kirby Smart's time here. Now, there's not quite there, but we are getting there. It's hard to believe, man. 2016 does not seem like it was that long ago. But all right, let's go ahead, guys. Let's dive into this depth chart. Again, this is volume 2.0, I guess, version 2.0, with the initial one back in early January. Some of it will be the same because I do think some of the things that I laid out there in January kind of got reinforced throughout the course of spring practice, but there are going to be some updates. There's going to be some changes here because there was some movement. There were some guys that were opening eyes throughout the course of spring practice. So let's start, guys, with the most important position on any football team, and that, of course, is the quarterback position. This is clear-cut for me. I love Ryan Puglisi. I think he's a really talented player. I think he has a chance to be a really good quarterback for Georgia eventually. Just not right now. He's got the skill set. I told you guys in the lead up to spring practice, kind of previewing what we'd see throughout the course of the spring, that I love Puglisi's skill set. I would still stand by what I said in the lead up to spring practice. Physically speaking, just from a pure physical tool standpoint, I maintain that Ryan Puglisi is a better toolsy guy, right? He's a more toolsy guy, a better physical specimen than Gunnar Stockton is. He's bigger than Gunnar. He's got a bigger frame than Gunnar. He's a little bit more athletic. That doesn't mean Gunnar's not athletic. I know when I say that, the Gunnar stands come for me. I'm not saying Gunnar's not athletic. I'm just saying Puglisi's a little bit more athletic. Gunner's got a good arm. I think Puglisi's got a little bit more of a live arm. He's just not there yet in terms of mastering the offense. He's just not there yet, guys. I mean, he's gone through one. It's not his fault. Like, he's a young quarterback. His first year on campus, he was banged up the majority of that time. until we really got into the season last year. So he missed a ton of those developmental reps, even though he was an early enrollee prior to the 2024 season. This spring was really his first real spring of taking actual reps out there. Love the guy, but he's not ready. Eventually, he can be the guy for Georgia. I do believe he can be. We'll see what happens to the Jared Curtis sweepstakes. Who knows what will happen down the road, but Puglisi absolutely has the skill set to be that guy eventually. It's just not going to be this year. One of my big takeaways from spring practice, I told you guys this coming out of G-Day, was I'm a believer in Gunnar Stockton now. I haven't always been a believer. I've been a skeptic. It wasn't, I would certainly not classify myself as a Gunnar hater. I never came out here and said he cannot do it. I just was open with what I had seen from him, whether it was at practice in fall camp, whether it was spring practices, whether it was G-Day, and I had some questions coming out of the fall camp last year, going to practice. Like, man, I don't know. I got some questions. But Gunnar he's come a long way in answering all those questions for me. I was skeptical, not a hater. Never said he couldn't do it. I just was along the lines of, hey, I need to see it to believe it. And Gunnar showed me more and more and more every single time I've seen the guy, whether it was him coming in the SEC Championship game in the second half. Did some really good things, helped us win that game. Wasn't perfect. Cleaned up a lot of those things. A month later in the Sugar Bowl, we didn't win the game. That wasn't Gunnar's fault. Fast forward to spring practice. Go out there to the coaching clinic. You get a chance to get a couple of practices. Gunnar looked like a different dude. Go out there to G-Day. I thought he was in complete control. Didn't make every pass, missed a throw here or there, but every quarterback does. So if you hold quarterbacks to that standard, then no one's good at quarterback if you have to hit every single throw. But he was going through progressions effortlessly. He knew where his checkdowns were. He was in complete control of the offense, hitting balls down the field. Loved what I saw from Gunnar Stockton. He is 100% the guy for Georgia at quarterback. I don't really want to spend that much time on this one, guys, because I've already spent a lot of time throughout the course of the spring talking about this. You guys know how I feel. Gunnar's QB1, hands down, zero questions asked. God forbid, knock on wood, if something did happen to Gunnar, I think Puglisi's talented. I still have some questions about him being able to run the offense to the point where we can actually beat some of the best teams on our schedule, because we haven't seen it yet. But I like him, just not there yet. So Gunnar, QB1, Puglisi, the obvious QB2 here, because outside of that, I mean, it's Hezekiah Millender, who's going to be a good player. He's a good player, talented guy. He's really raw, man. Coming out of high school, he's just from 2 miles down the road from here. I live in Athens. Clark Central High School, seen this guy play most of his games last year. Talented guy, just not there yet. So it's Gunnar, it's Puglisi quarterback. Let's move on. Wide receiver. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit more interesting, because, guys, we are, speaking of loaded, this is where we have completely flipped the Georgia offense. This wide receiver room has flipped, guys. We took what was I think, arguably, I would make the argument, some people disagree with me, that's fine. Some people say offensive line. I would argue the single greatest efficiency we had at any position last year was wide receiver. Now, some of that was injuries, some of that was legal issues off the field, but it just wasn't good enough. We were fine, we weren't bad, we just weren't good enough, right? We all know the well-documented number of leading the country in drops, all that, but beyond just the drops, is who did we have that was going out there forcing teams to game plan around them, right? Who was out there as that alpha guy that was attracting consistent double teams? We didn't have that guy, right? Who was that go-to receiver? We didn't have a guy like that. Do we have a guy like that this year? I think so. Do we have a Brock Bowers? Like I said at the outset, probably not. That guy is a freak. We got to stop comparing people like to Brock and Ladd and all those kind of guys. Those guys are rare. But I think we have a number of players that can really help us and could, I think, 3-ish guys that could potentially be alphas for this Georgia wide receiver room, which is a lot more than we had last year. So there's a lot left to learn here in terms of how this will shape out when we get to the fall, who's going to start. But right now, sitting here, it is April 27th, giving you my post-spring depth chart projection. This is all based on what I saw throughout the course of spring practice, what I was hearing throughout spring practice, what I saw at spring practice, and then also, of course, what we saw at G-Day, right? So at G-Day, this is what I'm going to go with, because this was the first receiver unit that we saw coming out there with that number one offense in an 11 personnel set with 3 wide receivers. At X, we had Texas A&M transfer Noah Thomas at 6'6", 200 pounds. We didn't see a ton of him at G-Day because I think he got mildly banged up. I didn't see him really at all in the second half. So he didn't do a ton out there, but he was out there in 11 personnel with the first snaps with that number one offense. When I saw practice prior to G-Day, the dude, he was very much head spinning, learning what to do with our offense. But in terms of just going out there and making plays, yeah, the guy can do that. He has that incredible frame, 6'6", 200 pounds. He is a contested catch machine. If you go back and watch, I know when you go look at his numbers at A&M, you're like, dude, his numbers don't tell you this guy's an alpha receiver. I know they don't, but look beyond the numbers. There was all sorts. It's like a revolving doors. It was like musical chairs at quarterback for A&M in the past couple of years. Not a great situation there. But this guy's got the physical tools. He's got the skill set. You saw it at times last year. He was flashed. The Arkansas game in particular, I thought he was really strong in that game. That was the game kind of leading up to the Alabama game, if you can remember watching that game. In their bowl game, they were really trying to feed the ball to him, especially in the red zone, because he's got that frame. You throw the ball up in his area, he's going to go up and win the majority of those battles. So he was out there with the number one offense at the X receiver position. At Z, a guy that I also think could play X for us, I think he was probably the best X on the team last year while he was still with the team, is Colby Young. At 6'3", this is a guy that's also, I told you this coming into last season, coming out of Miami, that he is also a contested catch machine. Maybe not to the degree Noah Thomas is, because Noah Thomas has 3 inches on him, has a little bit of a better catch radius. But Colby Young, he's the guy that's flashed to me the most when I was at practice earlier in the spring. This is a guy that, it makes sense, right? He's not learning the offense the way that Noah Thomas and the way that Zachariah Branch are, right? He's not new. Yeah, he missed half of last season, but he was here all spring last year. He was here all fall, banged up at times, but he was here in the meeting rooms. He played for us about 4 or 5 games last year. So that's not a question for him. It was just a matter of him getting back up to speed and him coming back late last year, not playing for us, but getting back on the team, going through those reps. I think that helped him kind of hit the ground running this spring. And he's the dude right now. Like, we have a ton of talented guys, and one of those guys could potentially surpass him as the season progresses. But right now, going into the latter parts of the offseason, go into fall camp here in a couple of months, I would project Colby Young to be Georgia's leading receiver this year. So I have him at the Z receiver position. And then at slot, this is where I was a little surprised. I was surprised to see Dylan Bell working as much at slot this spring as he was. He's a guy that prior to the whole Colby Young situation happening and prior to the Ra Thomas situation happening, he was going to be our starting Z receiver last year, right? Like, he's not the biggest guy. At X, you want to have typically a bigger guy because you're typically on the line of scrimmage at the X receiver position. I know you can flip things around, you can move guys around, right? Now, offenses have evolved over time, but traditionally, the X receiver position guys on the line of scrimmage, and that means you got DBs that are in your face, off the line of scrimmage, off the ball, press man coverage. You have to be big enough and strong enough to be able to get off that press man stuff on the outside. You don't have the benefit of playing off the ball where they can get their hands on you, right? So you need that bigger guy there. And that's why I think Noah Thomas, just in a bigger frame. Colby's a bigger guy too, so they can both play that position. But Dylan, he's a big enough guy, but he's not a classic X receiver. More of a Z. He was playing that position last year. But seeing him play a lot in the slot this spring, it makes sense. Because on one hand, number one, you want to get Noah Thomas and Colby Young on the field at the same time. You have 2 potential alpha number 1 guys there. And getting them both on the field at the same time, yeah, that's a big deal. You want to try to do that as much as you possibly can. Now, we're going to rotate a lot receiver. We always do that. But those dudes are studs, right? And it's tough to double both those guys, right? And if you get single coverage, just look at GA as an example, guys. I know it wasn't on TV, but if you were there, anytime, really anyone at the receiver position got one-on-one coverage, it was almost like an auto check. Like, we're just going to throw it up to you. Because you got guys like Noah Thomas. You got guys like Colby Young. You got guys like Tylen Taylor. And you got guys like C.J. Wiley who can go up there and just win one-on-one. Even our slot guys were going up and winning those one-on-one balls. Zachariah Branch, the Jeremy Bells of the world, all those guys were winning those one-on-one matchups. So I love having those guys on the field at the same time. And so where does that leave Dylan? Like, Colby Young's not a guy that's going to play in the slot. At 6'6", Noah Thomas isn't playing the slots. But at 6'1", Dylan Bell can kind of fit in there, right? So I love having him there in the slot. I also think he's a guy that's really good with his ball in the hand, with the ball in his hands in space. Look at what he did at running back in 2023. We know what that guy can do with the ball in his hands in space, and that's one of the strengths of his game. Now, we didn't see really anything of him at running back at G-Day. I'm going to tell you guys right now, he was working a fair amount at running back throughout all the spring. Saw it with my own 2 eyes. That's going to happen. But I do think, based on what we saw at G-Day, I would project right now Dylan Bell to be the starting slot receiver, which that I would not have guessed. In our January edition of version 1.0 of this depth chart projection, didn't have that on my bingo card. So that's an update there. The guy I did have as our starting slot receiver, my projection, was the USC transfer, Zachariah Branch. He's a pro-typical slot guy. That's what he plays, guys. He's not going to play outside for us. He is a slot guy. And he is, he's got everything you want in a traditional slot receiver. He's got that twitch, which is, if I'm looking for a slot, I want speed and I want twitch. Because when you run those option routes, you got a 2-way go, come off the ball like that. if you've got good hips, you can make it really, really hard on those nickel DBs. And I think he's got that. He's got that explosiveness off the ball to run some slot fade stuff, which we didn't do a ton of last year. I thought we probably should have a little bit more. Dominic Lovett, that's neither here nor there. But I think we'll do more of that. If what I saw throughout the course of spring is any indication, you're going to see more of that. I think it's going to be like a 1A, 1B scenario in the slot with Dylan Bell and Zachariah Branch. I think Dylan's going to get some opportunities to play a little bit of running back for us. I think we're going to use that situation, certainly on third downs as well. But Zachariah Branch had a really strong spring. I did a video on him, did an episode on him a couple weeks back now. It's about how much of a playmaker he was throughout the course of spring. And I stand by that, guys. I saw it. I heard it. That buzz kept building more and more and more as the spring progressed. And you saw it at G-Day. He beat Janelle Guerrero on a slot fade, went up 50-50 ball, and he got that ball. It's tackled like the 1 yard line. Love Zachariah Branch. I think his best football we're going to see his best football this fall in the red and black between the hedges. Now, go back to X receiver. Noah Thomas is my number one there. I would probably have Colby Young at number two there. I think those guys are. I think Colby can. If Noah Thomas was on our team, I think Colby Young would be our starting X receiver, but he is on our team. So say Noah there and behind Colby Young. So if Noah's playing and Colby's playing Z, I would say CJ Wiley right now. Got a lot of work with the number two offense at that X receiver position. He's also a guy that's tall, long, athletic, not quite as tall, not quite as big a frame as Noah Thomas, but at 6'4", he's already added some good weight. That was one of my questions about him coming out of high school. Like, he's kind of thin, kind of rail thin coming out of high school, but he's already added some good weight, got some good strength on him, and his catch radius is off the charts, man. Strong hands, really, really good athlete, good speed, all that. I think he's going to be an awesome player for us this year, but I think he's going to kind of be in a supplementary role to both Noah Thomas and Colby Young this year, but I do think he'll make some plays for us at the X receiver spot. At Z, again, Colby Young one. I think Dylan Bell can also play Z. You saw that times at G-Day. He's going back and forth between X and Z, especially when Noah Thomas went out. Colby moved over to the X, and then you got when you put Zachariah Branch in at the slot, you can slide Dylan Bell out to Z. You'll see some of that this year. Talon Taylor, another member of that really highly touted 2025 Georgia wide receiver recruiting class. 5-star dude. It's an elite route runner. Not as big as CJ Wiley at 6'1", about 175. But this guy can play inside the slot. He can also play outside at Z. I think he's big enough and strong enough to be able to do that. You kind of saw him do a little bit of both at G-Day. Like him, London Humphreys is a guy to watch here for, guys. He had a great G, especially the second half of G-Day, playing with the number two offense, had a couple touchdowns and some good things in the rounds. Really good speed, good size, good hands, had a couple of drops at the end of last year, but this guy can make plays for us. It's just a matter of where does he fit in. I do think he's more of a Z than he is an X. At times last year due to injuries, he had to play a little bit of X for us, but he's more of a Z. Just right now, unfortunately for him, I see him behind Colby. I see him behind Dylan if Dylan's playing a little bit of Z. And then he's going to be fighting with a guy like Talon Taylor. I think that's what's going to come down to. Kalen Humphreys jump ahead or stay ahead of a guy like Talon Taylor throughout fall camp. But he'll have a chance there to be in our rotation as well. But again, the slot, Dylan Bell, Zachariah Branch, that's like your 1-2 punch in the slot. And the guy to keep an eye on, to not forget about, and I did an episode on him a couple weeks back during the middle of spring practice. I really kept talking about him all spring long. Jeremy Bell. I know this dude's like 5 nothing and he doesn't weigh anything. I understand that, guys. He's too small to play for Georgia. He can't possibly play for the Georgia Bulldogs. Not when we have these guys and this highly touted guy, this 5-star guy. I'm just telling you, man, Jeremy Bell's going to play for Georgia. He's going to play for Georgia like this year. It's not like a wait a year or two thing. This is not what we're talking about. It's not talking about, this guy, he made some plays against the number 2 Georgia defense during G-Day. So, he made some plays, but he's not actually going to do anything to help us during the season. Guys, he played the entire second half of G-Day with the number 1 offense. Why did he do that? Well, he earned that. That's why. Because all he did all spring long was make play after play after play. I saw guys, the coach's clinic, I'm looking around like, who is this guy? What is happening here? What am I missing? How did I miss this? I knew him coming a little bit as a preferred walk-on coming out of high school. I knew he gave up an offer from Indiana to come to Georgia as a preferred walk-on. But, you preferred walk-on, you don't really expect that much. I'm just telling you, the dude's balling out there, man. He's twitchy. He's fast. Yeah, he's small. I don't care. Playing the slot, you don't have to be that big. Now, the only question with Jeremy Bell is, in the Georgia offense, at receiver, you got to be able to block, right? We've seen that time and time again. If you can't block, you look at Anthony Evans last year. The guy just couldn't get it done blocking, right? Just couldn't. You go back to the Notre Dame game, the Sugar Bowl, they had that play where Etienne fumbled in the red zone. Yeah, Etienne fumbled. That's because Anthony Evans just completely whiffed on his block. Just didn't block it. He comes in unmolested, blows up Etienne, and you're kind of helpless in that situation there. We got a defender running full speed at you from the secondary. unbothered, you got to be able to block, right? You got to be able to block, and that's the only question I have there. But in terms of going out there and making plays in the passing game, oh yeah, Jeremy Bell is a playmaker extraordinaire, okay? Size be damned, guys. This dude went up and was winning 50-50 balls at G-Day, okay? He can make plays. With the ball's in his hands in space, yeah, he can make plays with the ball in his hands in space. He can also make plays when the ball's in the air, man. This dude is legit. The problem for him is you've got both Dylan Bell and Zachariah Branch ahead of you, but I don't think that means that Jeremy Bell is not going to play for Georgia. He's going to play. He might not play as much as a guy like Zachariah Branch, but he's going to get opportunities because he's just, when he's on the field, he's a playmaker. He can make things happen. So I do expect him to be on the field as well. I love Sokovie White. He did some good things toward the end of G-Day. We're just loaded. Like, he's really a slot guy, and we're loaded at slot. So I just don't know how we're going to find reps for all these guys in the slot this year. But hey, that's a great problem to have. But kind of get what I'm talking about here? The Georgia offense straight up loaded at the skill positions, and that's just the wide receivers. What about tight ends? We know we have an Oscar Dub. We know we have in Lawson Lucky. Those guys are proven entities for this Georgia football team. I think we're going to see an even better version of Lawson Lucky in year 3. You start to see him really kind of take off towards the end of last year. I think this is going to be a big year for Lawson Lucky. Oscar's been great for us for a number of years. He's kind of more in that inline role, but can still certainly make plays for us in the passing game. He's not as good of a blocker because he doesn't have the same body as a guy like Darnell Washington, but he's a better pass catching option than Darnell Washington was. He's a little bit of a better athlete than Darnell was. So kind of a mix there. But I love Oscar, love Lawson. But what has me even more excited about the tight end position, if it was just the 1-2 punch, hey man, Weirs goes anywhere in the country at that position just with those two guys. But when you throw in a guy like Jaden Riddell in year 2, who I think is ready to take off in year 2 for Georgia, I think he's probably going to be our number 3 tight end. You know, Georgia, we used 3 tight ends. We did last year with Urosic and Delp and Lucky. I think Riddell will probably be that guy who's going to open the season. He's a guy that's a really good athlete. I think he was a little thin last year. He's added some good weight, added some strength, become a better blocker, a more proficient blocker for us. He's got really, really good leaping ability as a tight end to go up and kind of win some of those 50-50 balls. Guys, we're so loaded in dudes that can go up and win those contested catches. Who do we have last year that could do that for us? Do we have a single guy when Colby Young wasn't playing that could go win a contested catch ball for us? Not really. Now we have, you got Noah Thomas. You got Colby Young. You've got C.J. Wiley, I think Lawson Lucky could do that to a degree. Jaden Riddell is certainly that kind of guy. And then another tight end, true freshman, 6'7", out of Camden County, Elias Williams. He's not going to play like a ton of standard downs for Georgia, but situationally, can he help Georgia win games? Yeah. Red zone? You better believe it. And there was a sequence at G-Day where the number 2 offense, where 3 consecutive plays inside the red zone were thrown to our tight ends, our freshman tight ends, and Elias Williams and Ethan Barbour. Love Ethan Barbour coming out of Milton High School. I think he right now is more equipped to play like a standard down role than Elias Williams. I think Elias can be really good for us down the road. He just didn't play much tight end in high school. So the blocking aspects of things, like inline stuff for him, that's a work in progress. But in terms of just going up and just catching the ball, in that frame, yeah, he can help us there, guys. Absolutely. I think we will probably use him situationally. But it'll be Oscar. It'll be Lawson. I think Jaden Riddell will be that number 3 tight end. And if you had to throw a 4th tight end there, like in standard down situations, so somebody got hurt, I think right now it'd probably be Ethan Barbour. But Elias Williams, again, can help us situationally as well. So loaded at tight end along with being loaded receiver. Well, what about running back? Well, guys, we just went out and added an absolute... I don't get ahead of myself. I don't want to say stud. We went out and landed a guy that will absolutely help Georgia win football games this year in Josh McCray from Illinois. All right, this is Illinois' leading rusher from a year ago. I know I did a video when we landed these guys, kind of outlining each one of their skill sets, but Josh McCray is a legit running back, dude. This guy can help us win games. Nate Frazier's still the guy. All right, Nate Frazier's still going to be RB1 for Georgia. He was a guy all spring long. He was the number 1 guy at G-Day. Josh McCray, though, is a perfect complement to what Nate Frazier brings to him. You think back to last year with Nate Frazier and Trevor Etienne, both really good, but very similar in what they bring to the table. Frazier's a little bit bigger, maybe ran a little bit more power, a little bit harder than Etienne, but they were very similar in their skill sets. Frazier and McCray are different backs. McCray is 240, 245 pounds, guys. He's a big power back, but here's the thing. He's not just one of those, bruising power backs, just puts his shoulder down and just looks down at the ground, just kind of runs through people. Not a slow plodding 245 pounds. This guy has incredibly nimble feet for a 245-pound running back. Remember TJ Duckett back in the day, coming out of Michigan State, played for the Falcons for a while? He's not quite as big as Duckett. I'm not saying he's going to be an NFL guy like Duckett was for a while. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the skill set is somewhat similar. Bigger backs that you would think ostensibly are just like big bruising power backs, but actually have really, really good feet. Maybe not those breakaway home run speed kind of guys, but really, really good feet, which I think is critical in a running back. You have those good feet to be able to find the hole, get through the hole, has really good acceleration, kind of like Bo Walker. I'll get to him in a second here. And a really good contact balance, an awesome 1-2 punch with Nate Frazier at the top of the Georgia running back room. And I do think that's going to be the top two guys in our running back room this year. And that's not to say I don't like the other guys. I spent a lot of time this spring talking about Bo Walker, the true freshman, the 3-star guy that no one's really talking about coming this spring in practice. This guy just came out like swinging, man, during spring practice. He stood out to me during the coaches' clinic practices. G-Day made some big plays as well. And this is a guy not as big as McCray. I mean, he's very different. He's like 5'9", maybe. Like 200, 205, 210 pounds, somewhere in that frame. It kind of fluctuates between those. But not a home run speed kind of guy. More of a guy that runs with authority. But he also has those really quick feet. He's got that twitchiness in space. He's got the ability to find the hole, get through the hole, to accelerate through the hole. He's really sudden. Love that in his game. I do think that Bo Walker's still going to help us this year. But when you have a chance to add a guy like Josh McCray, who's a proven player at the college level, going into his 5th year in college as a grad guy, yeah, you got to bring him on board, man. So I do think that Frazier McCray will be the 1-2 punch there. But guys, this is the SEC. You've seen it year after year after year for Georgia now, where guys go down at the running back position. It's part of playing the SEC. It's running back live from the SEC. So Bo's going to play for us. I absolutely believe that. Right now, I would position Bo Walker as the number 3 running back for Georgia. Now, Chauncey Bowens did some really good things at G-Day, and I know I'm kind of going against my own thought process here because I told you at the outset I'm going with what we saw at G-Day and what I saw through spring practice. And Chauncey Bowens actually was working the number 1 offense ahead of Bo Walker at practice, but I chalked that up to Bo being an early enrollee, and Kirby very rarely is going to put a true freshman with the number 1 offense or the number 1 defense. Rarely. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But it's kind of one of those things like you got to earn it, right? You got to earn your stripes here. And Bowens did some good things. I think Bowens is a good running back. I was very impressed with what I saw from Chauncey at G-Day. I think looks quicker, looks more explosive than he did last year when he got a few opportunities. But from what I've seen of those two guys, and it's not a ton. Right now, I would still project Bo Walker to be the 3rd guy getting snaps at running back, would be my guess. I'm talking standard downs. Cash Jones is going to play. Cash Jones is going to play more of that 3rd down specialist role, right? That passing option out of the backfield, kind of the role he filled last year. I think Bowens could factor in. I just right now would have Bo Walker ahead of him. Of course, Rod Robinson, that's still kind of the $1 million question. Like with an injury situation, how healthy will he be? When will he get cleared? When he does get cleared, what version of him will we see? Because you think back to last year, like, yeah, Branson Robinson was cleared, but early in the season, like, it wasn't the same version of Branson Robinson that we had seen prior to the injuries. And, I mean, Rod's been dealing with a variety of injuries, guys, for the past couple of years. So I'm hopeful to get Rod Robinson back in the fold. I mean, he's closer to what Josh McCray is than anyone else in our running back room, but you just don't know. You don't know. So I'm going to kind of keep him on the periphery. I'm not going to include him in this depth chart until I see him back on the field, cleared, ready to go. We'll revisit that once we get to the fall, because we'll do this again once we get closer to the actual start of the season. But Nate Frazier, Josh McCray, your 1-2 punch there, running back, and then followed by Bo Walker and Chauncey Bowens right now would be my projection. All right, let's close up things here today with the offensive line. A lot of moving parts here, guys. We had a number of players that were banged up that I do think are going to start for us this year. So there's not as much clarity on the offensive line as I think there is at quarterback, at running back, at tight end, and maybe to a lesser degree a wide receiver. I think there's clarity at the top of the wide receiver. I think the 2 deep, like the 2s and 3s at wide receiver, that's a little bit up in the air. I think there's some competition going on there. But here, let's start with what we do know, all right, on the offensive line. I do know that Drew Bobo is going to be Georgia's starter at the center position. I projected that coming into the spring. I'm now projecting that coming out of the spring as well. Behind him, Malachi Tolliver, as a rising sophomore, I think is a guy that's going to do some good things for Georgia in the future. It's just not going to be this year, barring injury, knock on wood. But Bobo, I know you hear the last name Bobo. For some of you, that just sends you into like apoplectic shock. I get that. And you think, oh my God, he's just a Nepo baby. Guys, no. Like, Drew Bobo can play. All right. Is he an elite NFL prospect? Probably not. But I was impressed with what I saw from Drew Bobo when he got spot snaps last year. I know the Ole Miss game was a bad look for him. Guys, it was a bad look for everyone on the offensive line. That was an incredible Ole Miss defensive line. Bubba was kind of playing out of position there, playing a little bit of guard at times. It wasn't a good look for anybody, right? But if you look at the rest of the season, I liked what I saw from Drew Bobo, and now that he's getting all those reps, the number one offense, I think he looks even better right now. I feel good there at center. Left guard is going to be Micah Morris. He's played a lot of football for Georgia. He's the most experienced guy that we have coming back on our roster right now on the offensive line. 6'4", 330. He's going to play left guard for us. Right guard, I feel very confident saying that's going to eventually be Daniel Calhoun once we get into fall practice, once we get into the actual season. He was the guy for the first week and a half, 2 weeks of spring practice who was repping heavily with the ones. He was the first guy out there getting most reps with the number one offense. He went down about halfway through spring practice with an injury, a minor thing. He'll be back for the fall. He's going to be fine. And then after him, it was Michael Uini. And Uini was getting some reps, like working in with the ones at times prior to Calhoun's injury. But it's Calhoun when he's healthy. Uini did some good things, and I'm excited about him if there is an injury, because we know we have injuries on the offensive line. We have that past couple years. I think Uini can help us there. Juan Gaston's the other guy to watch at right guard. True freshman. I think long-term he's probably more of a tackle, but right now I think we feel like we have some tackles that are a little bit ahead of him that we trust there. And with the injury to Calhoun, he was sliding in there, repping at the right guard position behind Michael Uini. So I do think if Gaston gets on the field this year, his best bet's probably going to be guard, but I do think Calhoun and Uini are ahead of him right now. If you go back to left guard, you got Micah Morris, and I think Uini could probably work in there as well. I think it's going to be similar to what we've seen the past couple years at the guard position for Georgia, where you have Tate Ratledge, right? And then you had the duo of Micah Morris and Dylan Fairchild. It was kind of like you had three guys there. You're going to rotate them in and out. Could we see that with Michael Uini this year? Yeah, potentially. I think he could be interchangeable with either guard position. And then, coach, you got Juan Gaston there as well. Jamal Merriweather's a guy that's been around for a while. At 6'7", I kind of always seen him as more of a tackle. We've seen a lot of reps at guard as well. Marquise Easley, we know, is gone. He's left the team. But, I think there's some clarity there on the interior of the Georgia offensive line. The edges is where there's still some questions, right? And that was my biggest question, the offensive line coming into spring. It's one of my biggest questions with the entire team coming to spring, because I thought we were really good on the interior last year, for the most part, when we weren't murdered with injuries. But the edges, man, the tackle position was a problem for us really all of last year. Part of the reason was we opened the season with two dudes that I don't think are really tackles playing tackle, with Ernest Green playing left tackle and Xavier Truss playing right tackle. I think both those guys are better suited to guard, but we had him playing tackle, and it wasn't a great look. And on top of that, then Ernest Green gets banged up. He kind of gets out of shape. He's not able to practice much, can't do much cardio. And so he already didn't quite have the footwork to really play left tackle. And now he's even slower out there. It was a problem. We eventually put him on the bench, and you put Monroe Freeling over there, who I do think did some good things for us, but he got banged up, had a major shoulder injury that he had to get cleaned up the early part of the offseason. He was playing with that late last season. I know. The Sugar Bowl was a bad look for Monroe. I get it. Got to remember, guys, he was hurt, okay? It doesn't completely absolve him for some of those missed blocks, but it certainly was a factor. I still very much believe in Monroe Freeling. I love this guy coming to high school. He was too thin coming to high school. He needed to gain weight, add strength. He's done those things. What I loved about him coming to high school is what I still love about Monroe Freeling. He's long, incredibly long, and he's got great footwork, really good athlete. Those things are still attributes that he has. And now he's going to year 3. I know it's kind of been up and down for him when he's got opportunities to this point in his career. Part of that's injuries. Part of that's just still being young and developing. I expect big things from Monroe Freeling this year. Unfortunately, he was not available for spring because he's coming off that labrum surgery. Okay, that sucks. I would love to see him get all those reps just for developmental purposes, being the guy at left tackle, getting all those reps with the number one offense. I think that would have been really beneficial for him. But he should be cleared to go for the fall and get all those reps there. I'm very high on Monroe. I do believe I would still project him, as I did pre-spring, to be the starter for Georgia at left tackle. But there is some competition there. Bo Hughley is a guy who's been in the system for a while now. I think he was a guy coming to high school I thought could play a little guard, play a little tackle. It looks right now that we're using him at tackle. He got a lot of work with the number one offense at left tackle with Monroe Freeling not available. And then Jazar Jackson, who's a guy that I am fascinated by. This is the dude that was like the semi-pro basketball player, overtime elite, hadn't played football since like 9th grade. We added him very, very late, just before fall camp last year, the last addition to Georgia's 2024 recruiting class. And obviously, developmentally, there was a long way to go there. Hadn't played football in a long time. But athletically, just from a physical tool standpoint, off the charts. Probably more toolsy than any offensive lineman we have. A higher ceiling than any offensive lineman we have. Problem was, and still might be, that he had further to go to get to that ceiling because he just hadn't played football. But I can tell you with a lot of confidence, people that I trust around the program, I was hearing this all last season, like during the season, that Jazar Jackson wasn't ready to help us last year, but he was progressing far more rapidly than anyone anticipated. And he got some reps with the number one offense at left tackle during the spring. Was up and down, as you might imagine, still very, very early in his development. But he's progressing, man. He's progressing. All the reps he got, that's the one silver lining from a guy like Monroe Freeling not being able to practice during the spring. You accelerate the development of a guy like Jazar Jackson because he gets so many more reps than he otherwise would, right? So that could pay dividends for us down the line. I just don't expect him to really be the guy barring injury this year, but I do like Jazar Jackson. I think he's at least in the picture in the depth chart at left tackle. And then at right tackle, it's going to be Ernest Green. He was the guy I worked with number one offense, really all spring long right tackle. I'm still of the mind that he is a guard more than he is a tackle. It is what it is. We're going to play him at tackle. Our coaches, for whatever reason, just see this guy as a tackle. I think we have more true tackles on our roster. Maybe they like the experience. I don't know. But I'm just glad if he's going to play tackle, thank God he's moving from left to right. Because look, man, I don't want to bash. I don't like to bash our guys, but I'm just being objective here. I don't want to see him at left tackle ever again. I'm scarred for life watching that guy try to play left tackle. Right tackle, I'm more okay with because you're not going to be facing the most dynamic pass rusher of the opposing defense as often as you would at left tackle, right? And you're also not protecting the quarterback's blind side. So I don't want to say his lack of athleticism, but his relative lack of athleticism relative to most left tackles, so what you'd want to see in a left tackle, I think it's mitigated to a greater degree at right tackle. So I still don't love him at right tackle. I would love him more at guard, but he's going to play right tackle. Our coaches seem just hell-bent on playing this guy at tackle. So he'll be the guy, at least open the season, unless he's just a problem there and we got to replace him. But if something does happen to Ernest, injury or just not getting the job done, who are the other options there? I think it's the same guys that we have at left tackle. I think it's Bo Hughley. I think it's Jazar Jackson. I think those guys are interchangeable there. Those are the names. So I think right now, Monroe Freeling at left tackle, Ernest Green right tackle. That's your starting tackle unit right now. Behind them, some combination of Bo Hughley, Jazar Jackson. Those are the guys. You can throw Juan Gaston in there a little bit as a true freshman. But I just don't think he is ahead of Bo Hughley or even ahead of Jazar Jackson right now. So the tackle position, I think there's still a little bit left to play out there because I'm still a believer in Monroe Freeling, but we did not see him at all this spring. We'll see. We'll see what version of him we get when we get to the fall. I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful, but we still kind of need to see it before we can believe it there, guys. But all right, there you go, guys. That is version 2.0. That is our post-spring Georgia football offensive depth chart projection. We'll do the defense later this week, so make sure to come back and check for that, guys. And hey, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now. Go ahead and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss any of our content, guys. I know all you diehard Georgia fans who've made it this far in this video, who are looking for diehard coverage of Georgia football, this is the channel for you. That's why we do this. We've been doing this podcast for 10 years, and we created this podcast 10 years ago to create content for guys like you and me, who are diehard Georgia fans, who just like the surface level coverage that you see out there for casual fans just doesn't do it for you. So if you're like me, go ahead, subscribe to the channel right now. Turn those notifications on, like, comment, all that stuff. Love to hear from you guys. And make sure to check out the Glory UJ podcast for full episodes of our show wherever you get your podcast. But thank you so much, guys, for being here. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.